325 billion. That is the current price of a blue party hat in RS3. A couple of weeks ago, a friend released a video about the prices of RS3 rares. With some of their prices closing in on $500 billion GP, I got to thinking, what if rares had made it into old school? Would today's players be in favor of the addition of discontinued items? And after nearly a decade, how Jagex almost let a discontinued item slip through the cracks of their no rares policy. To answer those questions, let's go back. No, more than that. Oh god no, keep going. Okay, right about there. The year is 2001 and RuneScape Classic is still in its infancy. Jagex is looking to spread some holiday cheer for its players, and what better way than to introduce some festive new items. Throughout the year, pumpkins, Easter eggs, Christmas crackers, Halloween masks, and the Santa hat were all introduced to the game. Of course, holiday events back then were a bit more basic than what we're used to today. Instead of a reward for a holiday-themed mini-quest, a JMod would often log in and drop holiday items for lucky players in the area. You can see a screenshot here of a player picking up pumpkins off the ground, and then this ancient clip of a crowd of players frantically scrambling to pick up Halloween masks in Ardoin. Other items became rares by pure coincidence. Half-full wine jugs became rares when wine in RuneScape Classic was changed from being a 2-drink item to a 1-drink item, and discs of returning were removed after players repeatedly tricked others to teleport to the black hole in RuneScape Classic, and then convinced them to drop their discs, locking them into the black hole until Jagex manually teleported them out. This meant that the only surviving instances of half-full wine jugs and discs of returning were owned by players that just happened to have a couple lying around. Over time, rare item values began to increase as players recognized their scarcity. Even in RuneScape Classic, holiday items grew to become expensive status symbols that many players just couldn't afford. Then in 2004, RuneScape 2 was released. Classic accounts were ported to these new servers, and the rares obtained from the Classic era found their way into the version of RuneScape that most of us grew up playing. By this time, people knew they had something special if they were holding on to a rare. Before the GE made its way into RuneScape 2, rares were traded in very specific locations across Gillinor. In World 2, you might recall these designated Falador park spots for buying and selling holiday items. In Free-to-Play's World 1, many rare sales took place behind Varrock West Bank. This clip shows a player strolling through the rare section behind Varrock Bank in 2007. You can see pumpkins and discs of returning went for about 10 mil, and green Halloween masks for about 20 mil. Time has only increased the value of holiday and discontinued items, driving them up to hundreds of millions and now hundreds of billions in RS3. With the current trajectory of rares, it's not too much of a stretch to think that we could see prices rise into the trillions for some items in the not too distant future. That brings us to Old School. By the time it was released in 2013, everyone, even people who had never played RuneScape, seemed to know about rares. The decision to add discontinued items to the game was a very hot topic, and the community was split. On one hand, rares are fun. The idea that some junk you might have lying around your bank could eventually become a discontinued item worth billions is exciting. The problem is, a lot of players were pushing for a one-time release of the holiday rares we've already talked about, and if players knew ahead of time that these would be distributed one time only, there would be hoarding on a mass level to try to secure a fortune for the future. But the magic of the original RuneScape's discontinued items was that nobody saw them for what they were originally. They were either items meant purely for fun, or garbage that was eventually updated out of the game. So Jagex decided to take this issue to the polls, a few times actually. Over the course of April and May in 2013, Jagex ran 3 polls to determine if the iconic RuneScape holiday and discontinued items would make an appearance in Old School, and if so, how? The community was clearly eager to see the return of these items, but how they'd be introduced and whether they'd be making a once-only drop into the game was where things started to go off the rails a bit. About 2/3 of the community wanted rares to be discontinued. That's to say, drop them into the game in 2013 and never distribute them again. As for how they should come back, options such as dropped as they were originally, treasure trail rewards, rare monster drops, purchasable in shops, and discoverables from skilling, much like finding a ring in a bird's nest, were all on the table. The suggestions got even crazier in the next poll, where the JMods threw out ideas such as Easter eggs being insanely rare drops from chickens, pumpkins spawning into farming patches, Halloween masks appearing in Draenor Manor or being dropped from spooky monsters, trading clockwork animals to NPCs for Santa hats, items being rewards from random events, pickpocketing Party Pete for a chance at a party hat, and a variety of other wacky suggestions. Players were so thirsty for rares around this time that Jagex even teased them by fake releasing them in the 2013 April Fool's event. Holiday items would fall to the ground, but players who attempted to pick them up would find that the items would literally run away from them. Even cornering one of these rares and attempting to pick it up would prove to be fruitless for players. Eventually, a decision was made. Rares would be making a return through community and holiday events, though Jagex hadn't made an official statement on if these items would eventually become discontinued or not. Over the course of months, as holidays and special events came and went, Jagex hosted community streams to spawn in these collectibles for lucky players who were online at the time. Here's a clip from one of these events where ModMattK was spawning party hats onto Crandor. Wait, is that my friend Wings? Huh, too bad he couldn't have looted himself an Infernal Cape instead. I'm sorry man, I can't help myself. Anyway, with players unsure of the future of holiday items, many sought to stockpile as many as they could with the hopes that they'd be worth their weight in gold in the years to come. Unfortunately for those people, today those items are quite literally worth marginally more than the price of gold in Old School. Jagex re-releases these items for every holiday event. So while the flow of these items into the game is controlled to some extent, the abundance of rares in Old School coupled with the frequent re-releases will continue to keep their value low. But what about accidental discontinued items? Funny enough, Old School nearly saw a genuine discontinued rare item make an appearance in October of 2021. During Old School's Halloween event, players could get their hands on a pumpkin pie. After the event, obtaining the pie was no longer possible. Jagex forgot to mark this item as untradeable, meaning they could be swapped through the Grand Exchange or traded directly to other players. This was quickly fixed. Pumpkin pies were updated to be untradeable, and any instances of this item in players' banks or inventories were removed. But a few players happened to have a pie in their GE collection box, and these survived Jagex's update. This gave birth to a new type of pure, the Pumpkin Pie Locked 27 inventory slot only account. Jokes aside, the JMods didn't want to introduce any new discontinued items into the game, and in the next update, all remaining instances of the pies were fully removed. With that action, I think it's pretty safe to say that at least for now, Jagex has no plans of allowing any new rares to make their way into the game. But what do you think? Would you like to see new rares like the pumpkin pie be allowed? One-time discontinued items distributed? Or do you think that Jagex's stance to safeguard Old School from trillion GP rares is the right decision? Consider leaving a like or a sub if you made it this far, and if you're interested to see how Jagex is fighting against other things like DDoS attacks, check out my video about that on screen now or with the link in the description below.